Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association. Missouri produces wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details on the variety of products made in the state are at choosewood.com.
Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Sarah Fenske. Artist Nanette Boileau's medium is video. Her new show, American Dreamers, Unalienable Rights, opened last week at the William and Florence Schmidt Art Center in Belleville, Illinois. Its subject might surprise you. Despite its name, it's not focused on immigration or the Bill of Rights. Instead, it's about athletes, 3 athletes specifically: a boxer, a mixed martial arts fighter, and a professional wrestler. In a series of intense videos, Boileau explores this trio's dreams of glory. Stepping into the gallery feels like stepping into the ring with these athletes and getting ready to take a few punches. Joining me in studio to talk about it is St. Louis artist Nanette Boileau. Nanette, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having us.
So what's the genesis of this show?
Well, this show definitely stems from the work that I did on Dakota Territory, which was part of the Great Rivers Biennial in 2016, which documented the cattle ranching industry in Wyoming and also the wild buffaloes in Custard State Park.
And that seems like way different than these
what
athletes.
This is going on. I know. So a lot of what I was doing was dealing with issues of labor and landscape and kind of notions of manifest destiny and how things are created and come to be. And so simultaneously, I was also working on my PhD. So I was looking very much in studying UFC, very interested in the sports itself.
UFC is Ultimate Fighting
Conference. And so it's a, an MMA brand that is a national brand in the United States. And so I was looking, just kind of, how gender plays in with, UFC and also its connection with Spike TV and how that affects, the viewer. And so I just, the more and more I got involved in researching the UFC and MMA and what's going on with the fighters, I was also training with a trainer and kept talking to him about it. And he kept telling me, well, I know a few fighters. And I'm like, kind of asked, why would they do that? Because for me to get into a cage and to put myself in that situation just seems scary, and like I wouldn't want to do it. Don't want to get punched in the face. Kind of the same thing with the boxing is like,
why would someone willingly do that?
Yeah, like this is something physically I don't want to do. And so, just kind of understanding, the drive and the interest to do such a thing. And the response from the trainer was, well, it's their American dream. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how this all started, was just, how do we attain dreams and how do we go about it? And so definitely with the MMA piece with Freddie and then also with Deborah is this kind of notion of placing yourself in a situation that you may not have an opportunity, which stems directly from Dakota Territory. Because not many people have opportunities to go spend, a month on a ranch and see how they take care of cattle and, and how does that connect with how the land management takes care of the buffalo in Custer State Park, and kind of, this opportunity to place yourself in a situation that you may not ever put yourself into.
And this makes for a really unusual gallery show. At one point, people are even asked to take their shoes off.
Yeah, well, part of, being in a cage is that you don't get to wear shoes. And so this also stems from the gym itself and the rules that they have for the cage. And JD's gym was instrumental in how the actual installation and the conceptualization of the exhibition was, because of some of the banners that they had, just the rules that they have for their cage, how their cage was made, that type of thing. And within the videos, there's 7 videos that are in this cage. So basically, we made a mock octagonal cage that people can enter into. So you've got the mat, which you've always got to, be sure that the mat's well taken care of so that, people can actually wrestle on it and be in contact with. And so part of going into the cage is that you have to take your shoes off, and there's a list of rules, which is, no biting, no long nails, there's no sparring, and then enter at your own risk type deal. So once you enter into the ring, there are 7 monitors that actually show different aspects of Freddie. I followed Freddie for a year, filming him both at the gym, at his house, and then also at 3 of his matches. I think you've had 4 total over the year.
Well, so this is actually a perfect time. Let's get to our other 2 guests who are here in the studio today. We're also joined by boxer Deborah Rush and MMA fighter Faroudin Kostyurovets, who goes by Freddie. Deborah and Freddie, welcome so much to the program.
Thank you so much.
So Freddie, Nanette was just asking you a question. Let's go to that question.
So, and I forgot what the question was.
Well, tell us how you 2 ended up meeting up.
Well, actually, it was another trainer that introduced me to Freddie, and then I went and talked to Freddie, and we got along famously. So we decided to start training together, and so he eventually became my trainer. But then at the same time, I was also filming him, and basically followed him around and filmed the poor guy, and. So and it was 3. What I was going to say is I forgot how many total. Did you have 4 total matches?
The time you and I were together, it was about 4 matches total. I've had about 8 matches, but the time Nanette and I trained was about 3 to 4 matches. I would say.
Yeah.
So Freddie, let's hear a little bit about your story. You came to the U.S. as a kid from Bosnia, is that right?
Correct.
What led you to get into martial arts?
Well, from a young age, I come from a war-torn country, that is. My parents moved to the United States in 1997. Now, as a kid, I always liked wrestling, and I was always into things that involved, like, me being physical. And I started Taekwondo at a very young age for discipline, and my parents at that time couldn't afford to put me through any kind of program, so it was like a if we give you this, we can't give you this kind of scenario. So I trained martial arts from at a young age for a couple of years, and then I kind of stepped away from the sport, and then I got into like powerlifting and weightlifting and so forth. But MMA was one of those things that I felt like it was me versus me. Growing up, I kind of struggled with team sports, but in MMA, you think it's not a team sport, but it really is a team sport, but you're in charge of your own team. You're like the spokesperson of your team. So for me, it allowed me to be in control. If I lose, I'm in control. I mean, I have to get better. If I win, I learned. So I was more in control of the circumstances.
And what do you mean there's a team? Do you mean the people who are helping to support you, or you mean that you yourself are many entities in one entity?
Basically, when you see a fighter in a cage, it's like a video game. Somebody's behind the remote. Somebody's saying, throw a jab, throw a kick. And then in between rounds, because you're so caught up with the emotion, you're so caught up in the intensity of it, that sometimes that's why so many fighters go back and study film on themselves, because they can't see what's happening in the fight. They've done it so many times that it's almost like a reflex of how they react to a punch or somebody tries to shoot a takedown. So a team in between rounds will be like, okay, we need you to heavily focus on wrestling this round, or if every time he throws a kick, we need you to counter with this. So you have somebody play-by-play in between rounds. You have somebody shouting across the cage, hey, like, throw some more kicks. And then when you're training for a fight, you have somebody who's in control of, who's in charge of your sparring sessions, who's in charge of your grappling, your nutrition, your strength and conditioning. So there's so many people that are involved in making you better. And that always was so exciting to me, because everybody played a role in who I was when I stepped inside that cage.
They're all on Team Freddie. Deborah Rush, how does that compare to being a boxer? Do you also have a team that's there sort of focused on helping you get better?
Yeah, absolutely. So I fight for a man named Kirk Douglas, and our gym is Realm Boxing. So really, boxing, you have everybody in your corner, but inside the gym, they're sparring with you, they're training with you, they're helping you become the better athlete, getting ready for the fight. So it's really everything Freddie said, plus, it's just a big family that's supporting you and getting you ready for your fights, your goals, your events.
And yet for both of you, when you're actually there in the ring, it's all on you. Deborah, what's that pressure like?
Sometimes you don't remember. You get in the ring and you kind of just zone into what you have to do. You don't have room for emotion in there. So I'm always nervous to get into the ring, and then once that bell goes, I'm good. because there's no time for anything else. So it's kind of nice, like Freddie said, like having that thought process that you're in control, which is why I love boxing in the first place. Like, it pushes you past your mental and physical abilities to see what you're really made of. And that's just an aspect of it I like. So getting in the ring is just like a test or a validation of who you are, who you're trying to be. Or
Freddie, do you feel that same sort of moment of being in the zone? Once you're in the ring, the nerves fade away?
It's as much, I always say this, like, you're on stage, but you don't even know you're on stage. So you walk out, you have hundreds of people, but that doesn't matter. That day, it's like, think of it, the best way to describe it is you almost get hit by a car, and you know you almost got hit by a car, and you're trying to fathom, like, thankfully I'm alive. You have that adrenaline rush. It's like you didn't think there's a car coming, I'm going to do this. So in that moment, you're trying to fight being calm. You're trying to stay out of your head. You're not trying to be emotional in there. So you're so much in the zone that the one thing they always remind you is have fun, because a lot of people, guys and girls, tend to go in there and they are so focused on what's going to happen that it really is fun. I mean, yeah, this person wants to hurt you. I don't know how fun that can be, but
that doesn't sound fun.
It doesn't sound fun. But you also know one thing that I think mixed martial arts has done for me is you know how the other person feels about you. They're trying to hurt you, whereas in life, you know, you might be in a situation like you don't know how somebody feels about you. In a fight, you know that person is trying to take your head off. At the end, you got to show yourself respect, and you gain this bond. I feel like I've had fights with guys that I've never had exchanged words since, but when I see him, there's this connection. It's like I spent a cage with another man, as weird as that sounds, in a cage, but you have this bond. You're so in the zone that you, for that 15 minutes or however long that fight is, you don't think. You're not thinking as much, so you're just kind of like flowing. You're just kind of floating in air. It's a weird description, but it's...
I see Deborah nodding. It sounds like maybe the same thought in boxing.
Yeah.
You feel that intense
so that
connection.
Sparring sessions, the getting ready for the fights, like, it's supposed to be like breathing. You get in there and your body should do the reflexes. That's what you've been training for. That's what all the hard hours have been leading up to, is this 3-round fight to just prove what you've been working on and what you can do. And it should just hopefully come natural. Sometimes it doesn't, but...
Nanette Boileau, you watched both of these athletes doing many bouts and practices. Did you see the fun that Freddie describes? Are they enjoying what they're doing as people are trying to kill them in the ring?
Definitely with Freddie. He enjoys
He's
it.
having a good time.
The intensity, too.
And Deborah was how we handled Deborah was a little bit different than Freddie. I actually wanted to be able to put the viewer into a particular situation. So that was more of a constructed scenario. So it wasn't me following Deborah for a year, and otherwise this project still wouldn't have happened if I had to do that with that. And then the wrestler and Chris Hargis. And so with her, I had her do specific things. And basically what it is that I wanted an opportunity for the viewer to be able to walk into a situation and be in the center of a ring. And so that you've got two fighters punching at you, but you're completely safe. So it's kind of this scenario of like, I want to see what it looks like at the end of a glove as the glove comes at you, because I can't imagine, being in either of these situations and having a glove or a foot coming at you. And, what is that like? I mean, what is it like to see that coming at you?
And that video of Deborah, which we played some audio of at the very beginning, it's so intense. She's so close to it feels like she's so close to your video camera. Was she just right up in your face?
Well,
Is that a trick of art?
With my fantastic artistic abilities, I was a safe distance.
Well, you really fooled us. We're here with Nanette Boileau, Deborah Rush, and Freddie Kostyurovats discussing Nanette's new show, American Dreamers, Unalienable Rights. It opened last week at the William and Florence Schmidt Art Center in Belleville. And as Nanette mentioned there's actually a third athlete that is featured in this show. He's a professional wrestler named Christopher Anthony Hargis. In one of the videos, he seems to call out the gallery goers. Let's give a listen to what he says.
Hey you over there, I'm talking to you. You got something to say? Why don't you climb in this ring and get in my face and say it? Oh, you think that's funny over there? Why don't you put that popcorn and soda down and come over here and try and make me laugh, if I'm so funny, tough guy? Oh, you think you're funny over there with your cut-off sleeves, trying to look all tough for your old lady sitting next to you? Why don't you show her what type of man you're made of and come up here and get in my face? Hey, old lady, Why don't you quit knitting over there and pay attention? You might learn something in your old age. Hey, you feeling froggy over there? Why don't you jump up here? Hey, I'm talking to you. Why don't you pay attention when I'm talking to you? You got something to say too? Why don't you come up here? I'm all ears. Nothing but space and opportunity over here. You got something else to say? Yeah, I'm talking to you. I'm talking straight to you.
That's wrestler Christopher Anthony Hargis talking trash in a video by artist Nanette Boileau. Nanette, having that playing in a gallery setting, it must have been somewhat disconcerting for some of the patrons to hear this guy. It sounds like he's calling you out.
Yeah, and that's was the intent of the piece itself was for it. The piece itself, he calls out and does smack talk 11 times throughout an hour, and just kind of randomly pops up, at different times, at different, durations, and
when you don't expect him to start talking.
No, and basically what I wanted to do was, to all of a sudden start booming through the gallery and just, start calling out the viewers like, oh my God, I'm getting called out, like what, what's happening here? And so, no, and he's been a professional wrestler for 20 years and has and when we're talking wrestling, so there's a big difference between professional, like when you say professional wrestling, we're talking WWE. So we're talking wrestling at the Chase. This is, they're still throwing each other and still, but it is, it for me, they're, being a kid and being older than everybody in the room, there was wrestling at the Chase and there was a TV show on Saturday mornings that, basically we watched the wrestlers do this and perform these, acts. And it was always this weird play between reality and play of, is this really real or is it fake, and so he's been doing this for 20 years and he's the self-proclaimed king of wrestling. And so he basically, there's an opportunity for viewers to have a step into the ring with Chris Hargis. So,
and there's also another somewhat unusual sport here. Even though boxing certainly has a lot of popularity nationwide, it's a lot more unusual to have a female boxer, which is what we have with Deborah Rush. Deborah, do you hear people who just can't believe that a young girl could be a boxer?
Yeah, I get it a lot. They're like, "You're boxing? Why do you want to get hit in the face?" Like, I'm like, well, I want to move my head and not get hit in the face, but, I just let them know, like, my attraction to the sport and how much I love it. But it is rare to come across female boxers, especially in St. Louis. I feel like along the coast, boxing is way bigger, but in St. Louis, amateur boxing is very small and very not kind of in the limelight. Mm-hmm. So it's really a big deal to have amateur boxing be brought up anywhere. So I'm excited for that. But there's not a lot of girls, so
does that make those of you in the scene? Do you end up sort of forming a community?
It is a community. I mean, we all want to win, so when you're in the ring, you're not like best friends, but outside of the ring, we may fight people that we spar with. So it's just such a small community that we have great relationships with gyms. Like we go to Wellston or 12th and Park and Wool, and we'll even travel to Granite City to go to Hit Squad to get the sparring that we need because the community is so small. But we end up fighting the same people that we fight at those gyms. So,
over and over.
Yeah. So
tell us this, for those of us who have never been in that ring, which I'm sure is 99% of our listeners, what's it like being hit by a girl?
It hurts. Girls hit hard. No matter what anybody says, girls hit hard.
That cliche is not true.
If somebody says, "Do you hit like a girl?" I'd say, "God, I hope so," because they are so aggressive. Female athletes in general, I think, are just so aggressive. But I spar mainly with guys, so I'm the only female fighter at my gym. So my teammates are all men.
And are they comfortable hitting you as hard as you want them to hit you?
Oh, yeah, they seem very comfortable doing that.
They're not holding back.
They're not trying to kill me, but they definitely want me to be the best I can be. And if they baby me, they're not doing that. So I have a very supportive team. While they're not trying to kill me, they don't relax because I'm a female. They have that mindset that I'm a fighter in the gym. So that's what I'm really lucky to have, that, because I don't know that every girl does have that wants to fight, but
what's it like fighting people that you have to fight again and again? Does that make for some weird situations, Freddie?
I want to add to that last part.
Yeah.
Going off what Deborah said. No, actually, I think when I go to a lot of the fights, the girls are probably more in your, like when you see two girls fight, you're going to actually see a fight. Because the guys, you got to realize that the girls are in your face, like they're ready to exchange. So you'll see two girls going at it, but two guys usually it's more planned, strategic, because usually if you have two bigger guys fighting, every punch possesses a full-blown knockout. So guys, everything's calculated. They're trying to minimize damage, but you'll see two girls, they'll give you a fight. You're not going to see two girls just sitting there. You'll see girls exchanging combinations. I would probably say that the girls actually put on more of a fight than the guys actually do in most of the fights that you watch. And that's in MMA and boxing, too.
Yeah, definitely.
Did you witness that in what you saw here, that the women are given better even than the men?
Well, I was pretty focused on Freddie, so.
Yeah.
And
Freddie, you're just a magnet.
There was only a couple of women bouts that happened during Freddie's fight. So, I mean, even the women in the MMA ring is still in the Midwest. And like Deborah said, on the coast, there's a lot more, but in the Midwest, there's not as many. And I think it was towards the end that there was actually more, it seemed to be more women showing up for the fights. So, but no, I was pretty focused on getting what I needed for my artwork. And
So, Freddie, what was that like? It must have been strange to your fellow MMA fighters that you're like, yeah, I've got this artist who's shadowing me.
It was. I mean, like I say this, I was actually telling my clients at work today, I was like, I like attention, but certain attention it's different to me. And I think this was, like, though I didn't spend 15, 20 years fighting, I've trained, and I feel like it brings a person into the world, what you're actually internally, what you're bringing into it, because it's a more internal process that you put outside in the cage. So it was neat. It was different. It made for different training sessions, and it was actually a very, very good experience.
And do you think the show ultimately captures a little bit what it's like to be you, to be an MMA fighter?
Absolutely. Actually, believe it or not, when I actually went to watch the piece, I was actually sitting there. Now that I'm looking at it from the outside in, not in during the process when you're more emotional, more in tune with it, I thought to myself, well, hey, this is barbaric. I'm like, who would want to do this?
You get a different perspective on your own sport.
I'm like, and when I go to fights now, like I'll go to the fights like with my wife or something like that, and we'll watch these fights. I'm like, these guys have to be crazy. I'm like, hey, you're going inside the cage. What are you getting out of it? But when I watch the fights, I saw that, like, you see the process, whether it's cutting weight, whether it's punching the back billion times, working a technique, working a scenario. It almost gives you a different respect for it, and you actually get to see things from it. It's a whole different experience, look, watching the piece when you're not actually going through it yourself.
Deborah, what was your reaction to actually seeing the show?
I thought it was cool. I didn't get to go to the opening night because I was working, but I got to see the previews of everything, and I just thought it was amazing how Nanette captured everything, and I think she's very talented, and it was cool to see, like, kind of what it looks like, because, I mean, when you're boxing, you don't pay attention to what it looks like on the end of the glove. You're just trying to move your head and counter it. So I thought it was cool to kind of take that step back, like Freddie said, and see the actual, like, visualization of what you are doing. And it made me ready to fight again. So I was like,
and that's where I think where Nanette's talent comes into place, because you got to look at it as, it's not a documentary, because, you can YouTube that, but it's almost trying to get you to relive the real life show, because when you walk into a fight, there's the walkout, there's the weigh-ins, there's so many parts that it's not just watching two guys exchange punches, and there's the actual fight. So I think what she was able to do, even whether it was with my piece or Chris's piece, she's trying to get the person who's viewing the piece to capture imagination. I think she was able to do that without actually having somebody to go to an actual fight and watching it. So
That's Freddie Kostyurovats discussing Nanette Boileau's new show, American Dreamers, which opened last week at the William and Florence Schmidt Art Center in Belleville. Freddie is on a brief hiatus now in terms of fighting, but has a professional contract waiting for him with Shamrock FC, which is St. Louis's MMM organization. We were also joined today by boxer Deborah Rush. Deborah, thank you so much for being here.
yeah, thank you.
And we were joined by Nanette Boileau. Nanette, congratulations on your opening.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you inviting us all here and allowing us the opportunity to talk about it. So,
This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.
St. Louis Public Radio's The Gateway gives you the day's news first thing every weekday morning. From the ever-evolving relationship between St. Louis City and County to developments in the Missouri and Illinois state capitals and reports from our correspondents in Rolla and the Metro East. We put it all in a roughly 10-minute package with clarity and context. Download The Gateway wherever you get podcasts.